but the district council as well, because we had a few things there to ask people to the quiz. What's not been mentioned, although I think Mike has alluded to, is speeding. I think it seemed like she had a speeding ticket every week, but that can't be the case because it was JP over here. But she did seem to get a few of those, and that's why. In fact, I wanted to be here earlier and park in her place as a tribute to her. And the roads haven't been closed, so I might have made it, but I didn't. One particular thing I remember though is a scrutiny role. I have to say, I got a discount for this council and managed to get an in-the-block trainer here to help them out as well. On scrutiny, we had some role play, the strange role play, very surreal, with both Margaret and I, maybe three of us, certainly Margaret and myself, were a junior officer. The council in question, there was a bit of a collusion between the chief executive and the leader. It wasn't criminal, but it was certainly diabolical, really, politically, because it was about hiding the results of this great investment that they put into a theme park within the council. Something not in a million places where the mines are closed actually. So I think it's based on a real story. And so we had to be the junior officer answering the questions of scrutiny. Within 2 minutes, you broke down and confessed and told everything. I knew what the trainer would say, so did me. Well, I was very honest of you, Margaret. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. You have no career, of course, in local government from now on. Anyway, that's it. Was the Margaret there. So yes, she was very. There was a time when we discussed having aldermen on the council, and I certainly opposed it. Nonsense. Except if there was only one person that would qualify, in my view, for being an alderman, that would have been Margaret, for the long serving and contribution as well to the council. So yeah, she was a great councillor, not on our side, but maybe at the end there, you know. You came to the life, I don't know, but I certainly miss this council chairman and Alan White's comments on the planning, those planning days. Yeah, they do ring true. Thank you.
Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chairman. All these mentions of Margaret's speeding next phase makes me think that she was almost a forerunner of Penelope Pitstop, of wacky races all those years ago, but a real character, no doubt. Her 45-year stint as member of this authority and its forerunner, the Lichfield District Rural Council, is, I believe, unprecedented, and the official recognition of her unflinching public service in the form of her MBE a decade ago was very richly deserved, and I think we would all agree. And her desire to represent the local community, both at the district and parish level, remained undiminished throughout her adult life. For the 2 decades that I knew her, and just referencing Councillor White's point that he was 7 months old when she became a councillor here, I only reflected on that this morning when I was thinking about saying a few words, and that is that the year that Margaret became a member of this council as opposed to the rural council, that was 1974, was the year that I passed my driving test. And that was a very, very long time ago, and that's just indicative of the length of service that she gave to the local community. But for the 2 decades that I knew her, she was a leading light of this place, and she was always authoritative, straight talking, and impeccably mannered, and I have to say, impeccably dressed as well. Her ability to state her case clearly and with gravitas earned her enormous respect, and her inimitable laugh was a very endearing characteristic. Frequently outspoken, always devoted to her cause, and striving to make her mark, her time as chairman of the planning committee did see the creation of a few sheds, which was a particular bête noire of hers. However, even when those sheds were given permission, she would always give a wry smile as if to say, "C'est la vie." And I think that summed up Margaret. She was incredibly pragmatic. She was very sort of no nonsense, but she took all the brickbats of life, she took them and she bounced back, and she was a really, really inspirational figure. And I think, as with Brenda, all of those of us in this chamber who knew them have been very, very fortunate, because they have definitely enhanced and brightened up the lives of a great many. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Ward.
Yes, Chair, I'm glad I've managed to arrive in time for this because I didn't know Margaret very well. And she did serve on the overview scrutiny committee with me when I first started here as a council after by-election. And she was very kind to me and gave me a few pointers about what to do and what not to do and what to say and what not to say. And I've always valued that and respected that. Especially when she said, well, you keep doing what you're doing, young man, and I think you might be successful at some point. So, you know, I was very flattered to be called a young man, you know, at that point, I was in my mid-60s, but, you know, I'm very fond of and have fond memories of it. I'm glad to be able to share that tonight with you. Thank you.
Okay, there are Councillor Sonny Wilcox.
Right, so I didn't actually plan to say anything tonight, but if so many of you have mentioned Margaret Speeding, I thought I would just say a little story. Because the last 10 years I've actually worked at All Lost Surgery, where Margaret was obviously a patient, and very highly thought of. And we didn't actually see much of her, because she was a very well person until quite recently when she deteriorated quite rapidly. However, for the past 2 years, she has taken to riding Michael's mobility scooter every morning past the surgery to the co-op to get her paper. And when I say she thought she was on a racing bus, you don't know the statement. And about 18 months ago, she bombed past the surgery, ran the corner to the shop, and she knocked medical secretary off her bike. And even yesterday, Melanie, our medical secretary, was going to get another MRI scan on her knee. So she's still with us.
If there are no other comments, I'll give you my recollections, and I do have recollections of the same thing as the planning committee that Margaret chaired, and I was on the cabinet at the same time as Margaret. I've described Brenda as the resident politician. I describe Margaret Summer as the politician's politician, because she knew just when to come into a debate. She'd listen to other people. She wouldn't always be the first to speak, and she would make points that needed making at the right time. So she would listen to the debate and realise that things weren't going the right way, and she'd come in quite forcibly and change the direction of the debate. And that was part of her skill to know when to speak. If things were going well, she didn't necessarily have to contribute. But if she interfered with the debate, it's because she knew something was going wrong and it has to be corrected. I think she something of a surgeon's skill, which is ironic to be able to work the debate the way that she wanted. She was never short of opinion, and you were never short of understanding what her opinion was. She didn't hold back. She was never unsure about things. It was always very definite and always very well measured and well argued. I think the other thing that I remember her vividly, and somebody mentioned Dark Lane and the number of times that Olderboss gets mentioned, it's ironic that a lot of people struggle with saying the word Olderboss, and even Jessica Parrott has made a skit out of how bad it is to pronounce as a word. But Margaret Summer used to work into more or less every speech, such as her dedication to that particular parish. And so I will miss her for that reason as well. In conclusion, in terms of the arrangements for Margaret's funeral, it's on the 6th of March. It's at 12 o'clock in Olderboss, and we've been asked to not have flowers other than family flowers, and for dedications to be made in respect of mind of Burton in lieu of flowers, if anybody wishes to. I should certainly be going on behalf of the District Council to that service on the 6th of March. If I can go on to other announcements, there have been many Christmas services since we last met, and in particular, I've mentioned the fact that we've been to the ones on behalf of East Staffordshire Borough Council, Howard District Council, and Newcastle Borough Council. Not least of which to say there were services in our own cathedral, which were incredibly well run. And on the subject of incredibly well run, I'll mention the fact that I was honoured to be present on the retirement service for Adrian Dorber as Dean of Lichfield. Some of us remember it starting with the cathedral, but he did have 14 years of service. And was a good servant to both the cathedral and to the city. And very keen on making the best of Lichfield. And to hear the tributes to him, there's obviously a tribute from the bishop, but there are also tributes from people who you will have heard of. Peter Halliday, who was involved with the cathedral, and also with the St Giles Hospice. And in terms of his involvement with the district council, some of Fletcher's predecessor, past two predecessor, would be like, Nina Dawes gave a very touching tribute to him as well. I have to mention, because it's the first time I had the opportunity to mention it, the karaoke night, which was very successful, and particularly I thank Councillor Salter for his providing the music. He's not here, but I thank Councillor Checklands for the use of the venue, and Councillor Ho for the donated prize from Ruby's Restaurant. I have to also thank various members of council who provided some of the entertainment. And for those that didn't go, you have to use your imagination, although there is film available at the right price. Your Vice Chair, Councillor Warburton, seen doing a duet with the Mayor's Consort from Newcastle on a guitar. Councillor Marshall with our favourites. Councillor Checkland, strangely with a falsetto number, which was very memorable in its own way. And then, of course, there was Councillor Cox, who was far too sexy for his shirt. And again, worth seeing if you get the opportunity. And it was a fundraiser for both my and the Mayor's and Sheriff's charity, and the last opportunity to do that is with the Chair's Charity Tours, which are starting at the Guildhall. It's combined city and district tour on the 7th of March. There's one at 3 o'clock and one at 6 o'clock. 3 o'clock has sold well. There are still places for the one at 6 o'clock. So it's a tour of things that you would have seen in the City Council, the cells, the Minstrels Gallery, some historic parts of the Bonneville House, and then across the District Council House, and you'll see parts of this building you may not have seen, such as the Headmaster's Room and some of the graffiti, some of the stories of the Johnson's School. So that's all on the 7th of March, 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock. It is £30, and it's for good charity. And that's the end of my announcements. Item 5 is the report of the League of Council on cabinet decisions from the meeting held on the 14th of February and cabinet members' decision. I'll call on Councillor Ian Eady to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I submit the report of cabinet decisions in the meeting held on the 14th of February and cabinet member decisions for noting. I'm happy to take any questions arising in the report, and I'll go through it item by item. Item 1, Money Matters 2023 review of the financial performance against financial strategy. Item 2, medium-term financial strategy, revenue and capital 2027. Item 3, local council tax scheme. Item 4, revised housing allocation scheme. Item 5, community infrastructure levy SIL allocation. Item 6.
Item 5, Councillor.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, I think the kill, not the word, I say kids very much people, but industry, social worker organisation. There's some disappointment about the result of this. We agreed that officers would look at it, and we assume that they're following the guidance that we agreed previously as well. But the results are rather odd in the view of myself, the council in particular. So I look at the strategic plan and the respective in keeping with enabling people to help themselves and others to collaborate and engage with them to live healthy and active lives, and the shaping place, keep it clean and green and so on, developing prosperity. I'm not sure everything is just down to live a healthy and active life, which is what the one application, the main application, which benefits this council, you can say that it follows on and benefits others as well. We got the main funding for, and so hopefully we'll look at that again on scrutiny, and it's pretty good. Maybe that we find that it's correct, but I think there's an opportunity for us to actually look at the system and the point system and so on, to make sure that we can get some transparency and confidence in the decisions that we made. That's something that hopefully we'll be doing in future. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Councillor Norman. Obviously being on the overview and scrutiny committee, and knows that a commitment was made on the evening to bring back the criteria that was used to score the bids. And so that the committee can have the opportunity to look at it again, both in terms of obviously the weighting that's applying and how it's impacting the decisions. And obviously, I'm sure that's something that will be done in this new council once it's formed after the local elections. And moving on, item 6, picture of the communications function. Item 7, new leisure facility at Stitchwood Park. Item 8, insourcing of the leisure provision.
Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Chair. If there's any option that we could actually do with the problems Freedom Leisure had in Berkeley Leisure Centre and at Priory Grange. But I just wonder, I will post the press release at the time that Edie did when the contract was signed, but can you tell me whether he regrets it now or at least thinks it may have been a mistake?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Norman, you raised this point obviously at overview and scrutiny meeting, and I believe the response I gave you at the time, I appreciate, and I don't remember it verbatim, so I need to give you the same. The decision that the council entered into in handing over effectively the day-to-day management of our leisure centres to Freedom Leisure was intended to bring about benefits, both for obviously the users of those centres and indeed obviously to the council in terms of the operating costs that we faced at the time. Do I regret that decision? You know, we shouldn't regret the decision because it was done for the right reasons. What we could not foresee at the time was the change in circumstances that came about as a consequence of COVID, the impact that had on leisure services and leisure centres in particular, and indeed those still continue to be felt today with the rising costs. I think as you've made the point already, I don't think that the council had any other choice other than to bring our leisure provision back in-house if what we want to see is those continue to be available for our residents, which I know all members do want to see. And then obviously cabinet member decisions. I think they're just from nothing, Chair.
Yeah, yes, there any questions on the decisions there? No? Okay. Perhaps to accept that report. We've got to item 6, which is the minutes of the overview and scrutiny committee, and I call on Councillor Mike Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. I submit the minutes of the meetings held on the 15th of December 2022, 19th of January 2023, and the 8th of February 2023.
Do I have a second, please? Councillor Norman. Back with you, Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. 15th of December 2022. Apologies for absence, declarations of interest. Minutes of the previous meeting, medium-term financial strategy. Exclusion of the public and press. Confidential minutes of the previous meeting. Minutes of the meeting, 19th of January 2023. Apologies for absence, declarations of interest. Minutes of the previous meeting. Health matters.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I am aware that there is a county council consultation regarding mental health across the age ranges. And I am grateful to Councillor Wilcox for pursuing this apparently, because it's a major issue that has been neglected for a long time. And I'm particularly concerned about the support available for young people, as I have said at committee. Even those at the lower end in primary education are now experiencing mental health problems, which is shocking, really. And the situation will only get worse if it's not addressed early. And CAMS has not been as effective as it should have been for a long, long time. Regarding the provision, as it appears to be a visit, I am disappointed, but it looks as if the mental health unit situated at George Brown Centre in Tamworth is not really being considered for a rebuild, as it did serve the Lichfield district adequately in the past. I do remain to be persuaded that the current thinking to allocate spaces at St George's in Stafford is adequate for many reasons, particularly the number of beds that will be available and also the accessibility to Stafford with some. But I am concerned regarding the suggestion that people who are suffering from mental health issues can more successfully be dealt with in the community. I hope, against hope, but this is not because it's a cheaper option, as it's not always worked very well in the past, as has been witnessed by a number of people. So I hope Councillor Wilcox is able to convey the concerns to the next county council meeting where this is to be discussed, as we do owe it to Lichfield district residents who require the services to get the best deal for them. Because often they cannot speak for themselves because of the condition that they find themselves in. So I do think that that is important. And ironically, this morning, we had an email sent to us about managing and reducing mental health waiting lists, as there is an increased demand for services, which we know that because a lot of the money is being directed into the acute service rather than the mental health service. And apparently there are over 1 million people across the UK waiting for appointments, which is absolutely shocking. And it is certainly a thing that needs to be addressed as soon as possible.
Councillor White, is it taken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to support Councillor Adams' view about the funding for mental health and the support for mental health. It's quite right to identify it as a very serious and important issue that we are pursuing in other places. The government does continue to invest additional funds into mental health, but actually it's a relatively small amount. Councillor Evans no doubt will recall that government announced on the 23rd of January an additional £150 million going into mental health services. But when one considers there's more than 150 upper tier local authorities in England, that isn't a great deal of money to go around. Further, they also announced an additional £40 million going into children's mental health services in June last year. Again, the work that needs to be done in order to improve CAMS is something I think that this authority and other authorities should be getting behind. It is a very, very important issue, and I'm delighted that Councillor Wilcox is pushing as hard as he is on this subject at the county council, because it's a vitally important issue, not just for our residents and our young people, but nationwide. It is a really important issue.
About you, Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that there is a 6-week consultation period that started on the 9th of February running to the 23rd of March. And I would encourage all members, particularly those on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee who I've sent the link to please respond to that consultation. It is all about the future of the George Bryan Centre. And the communication involvement plan that we put forward. So it is important that we do comment. We will obviously be replying on behalf of the council, and I will continue as Councillor Evans now and thank Councillor White for the fact that I will pursue this through county to make sure that the residents or our residents that are affected in any changes that happen are looked after properly, and that all implications regarding how they travel to Stafford and the logistics around that are covered and the expenses are covered if people are having to travel. But I would really encourage anyone who has the opportunity to either go to one of the drop-in centres, the drop-in events that are happening across the Staffordshire, as well as the consultation, to actually get involved and make your responses back. Because if enough people respond back with the concerns that we have here in Lichfield and Tamworth, then maybe they'll be looking at other options for us going forward. Thank you, Chair. Medium-term financial strategy. Elections Act, including voter identity.
Ms. Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. 55 minutes is one of the longest I've ever sat on my hands at a meeting. So, I didn't quite get to the hour. Apologies, everybody. I did just want to write this here just to reinforce this in a minute there, because I think it's really important that actually every single person in this chamber and every single person that we can get the message to, we do, that voter ID is coming. Staff at this council are working very hard on making sure that that's going to be as well as it can. I'm sure there is, or I know there is an argument that we can have about why it's happening and whether it's needed, whether it's a solution looking for a problem. But actually that time passed, it is now law. And we absolutely must take every opportunity that we can to remind everybody that it will still be easy to vote on the 4th of May. And going forwards, you will just need your ID. We can take the opportunity now in the minutes online. And again, every single one of us in all the conversations that we will have between here and May, and I'm sure that some of us are planning on having one or two. We can take that opportunity to remind people, yes, it has changed. Yes, the staff of the council will work hard to make sure it's going to be implemented well, and it will still be easy to vote. We absolutely must make sure that nobody in this district or anywhere else loses their democratic right to vote. Part of that is us reminding people how easy it's going to be, following the good work of our officers, but also if we find people who aren't sure to go back LLD, direct them to that government portal, make sure that they've got the relevant forms that they need to get, so that every single person has their vote. We all really care about democracy while we're here. There are dozens of hundreds of thousands of people in the district who do so as well, and it's incumbent on us all to make sure that message gets out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. We did have a very excellent presentation at the meeting by Christy Timms, and we have actually asked that we have a verbal update at the next meeting just to make sure that we are on top of this and that the officers are not getting overwhelmed by the numbers of people that are approaching them. Work programme, exclusion of public and press. No,
Councillor Watson, yeah.
And I'm back again. Just very quick on the work programme. The same with minutes here that we tabled something to have a discussion about the left membership. We had a discussion at the meeting about the left membership. But my understanding is certainly the outcome of that discussion is that it was pointless having a discussion about the left membership because they're going to tell us, and then that will be the end of the discussion. So potentially we can save officers some time in producing a briefing report which says there is nothing to do about that, but making sure that doesn't happen. I think that's more of a matter of accuracy than anything else.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, that's noted. Thank you. 8th of February 2023. Present, apologies for absence, declarations of interest, minutes of the previous meetings, future of the communication function, community infrastructure levy, SIL allocations 2022, new leisure facility, Ditchbrook Park, insourcing leisure provision, exclusion of the public and press.
Councillor Norman.
Give me an opportunity to ask Councillor Wilcox a question, if there's enough to answer, which is that is he aware that Freedom Leisure only has a contract with Lichfield District, and they can possibly have any contract anywhere else in the country, despite the rumours, because the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, affects the whole of the country, yet it's only Lichfield District where Freedom Leisure contract has failed currently.
Mr. Wilcox.
I was not aware of that. No. New leisure facilities, Ditchbrook Park, for report. Insourcing leisure provision, for report.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm just going to comment on that previous statement. Yeah, I think we all know the situation with the Freedom Leisure contract, and Freedom have been. They came to us, and they asked us to if we could look at the contract, and to talk about it in the confidential part of this. But needless to say, Freedom came to us, and it became the only option for us to do to move out that contract. And we had a payment from Freedom to come out of that contract. We'll talk about these in the confidential.
Right, with you, Councillor Wilcox.
I think that concludes the report, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We go to item 7, which is the minutes of the planning committee, and I'll ask councillor Marshall to speak.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I move that the proceedings of the planning committee meetings on the 9th of January and the 6th of February 2023 be received and, where necessary, approved and adopted.
Will there be a second by councillor Baker?
Yes, thank you. I have pleasure in seconding both sets of minutes.
Yeah. I'll take it through on the page numbers. First meeting, page 33. Page 34. Page 35. And the second meeting, page 37. Page 38. And page 39. Minutes as a whole. Yeah. Item 9 is the minutes of Audit and Member Standards Committee, and I call on councillor Spruce.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the proceedings of the meetings held on 18th January and 2nd February 2023 be received and, where necessary, approved and adopted. Thank you.
Councillor Hove, a second.
Yes, they are accepting the process.
Okay. I'll take those by minute number. 38 apologies, 39 declarations of interest, 30 statements of accounts, 31 audit findings report for Richard Council 21-22. And to the next meeting, 32 apologies, 33 declarations of interest, 34 minutes of the previous meeting, 35 treasury management statements and prudential indicators, 36 internal audit progress report, 37 risk management update, 38 GDPR data protection policy update, 39 taxi license update, and 40 the work programme. Minutes as a whole. Item 9 is the Special Employment Committee. I'll call upon councillor Matthews to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I move the proceedings of the Special Employment Committee held on the 24th of January 2023 be received and, where necessary, approved and adopted.
And seconded by councillor Sonia Wilcox.
Yes, Chair, I second.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. There's 2 points I want to make on this, and the first one is about the regularity with which we have special employment committee. If you look at since the start of 2022, I think we've had 3 special meetings and a rescheduled one, and I think it would be appropriate for us to just note that that is quite a high rate. I think there's only one of the employment committee called in that period that's happened on schedule. Someone's council. And we're aware that it's been a time of flux within the council. I think there have been a lot of changes and things been moving on with being a better council strategy coming through. And this isn't necessarily meant as a criticism of anybody, but I do think particularly when we look later on and we're setting the dates for meetings throughout the year, that's not necessarily just our diaries that are set by that. You know, we have close to the open public. I'm really glad that we've got big members of the public in the gallery today. And I think we do need to, where possible, stick to those dates if they're published. The other point that I want to make is in relation to item 17. I'm aware it's in private and I'm not going to cross any boundaries there. I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Wilcox for agreeing to make sure that that item was then brought back to the overview group committee at special ONS. Because that was, when it came through to employment, it certainly seemed like it was something that needed to be looked at in more detail and make sure that those were going out. I thank officers for listening when we raised that point in committee and making sure it went across, because that was something that we really did need to look at.
Okay, Councillor Wilson, you jumped to item 17. I'll go through the minutes in order. First of all, apologies for absence, item 12, declarations of interest, minutes of the previous meeting, pay policy statement 2023, exclusion of public person and the restructuring of service, item 17. Potential change to service item 18. Any comments? Minutes as a whole? Yeah. All right, that brings us to item 10, which is the medium-term financial strategy and council tax resolution. I need to remind members that in accordance with section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, any member of council tax arrears unable to participate in the debate and decision-making in relation to the budget and the council tax setting. There have been checks within the section to make sure that as far as the council's concerned, it seems to be the revenues paid up, but it is an obligation on behalf of the member to make that declaration if they are up to date. Well, this would members to declare if they're not able to participate. Can I call on Councillor Strachan to open up the debate on this item?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Could I start these observations by formally placing on record my thanks to Anthony Thomas and to the finance team for their work in the preparation of the budget and for the efforts of the Open and Scrutiny and Audit Committees in considering it and providing critical and broadly supportive analysis. I'll shortly move that the medium-term financial strategy be adopted alongside the 17 recommendations that stand in my name, and I am aware there are a few. But before I do so, I'd like to provide a little bit of context and rationale around the decisions we've taken this year and why those resolutions are there. Members will, I'm absolutely sure, be sick to the back teeth of either myself or Anthony bemoaning the lack of certainty in local government finance. This year is unfortunately no different. I think this is now the 10th consecutive year that the Cabinet Member for Finance of this authority that stood up for the MTFS speech with no clear understanding of what the landscape will look like beyond year 2. It's certainly the fourth budget speech that I've given in that situation. However, we have an increasing number of friends and supporters. Only last month, the Local Government Association and the District Councils Network published a joint letter to the UK government calling for an end to the uncertainty, for a multi-year settlement, and for a resolution of the issues on funding share. Last year, you think before I drew the council's attention to a report from the Public Accounts Committee on that point, and I'm very pleased to have seen some members of Parliament keeping pressure on the department and its new minister after the recent reshuffle, and I wish strength to their cause. For my small part, I will repeat that plea to central government. Please confirm and consult on the revisions to business rates. Please collapse the uncertainty on fair funding, and please have the bravery to fund local services appropriately and well, without forcing us into uncertain post-COVID periods. I almost don't care if it's good or bad news. Just give me the certainty that I need to plan for whatever eventuality. Chairman, this year's local government finance settlement was a single-year settlement, with some broad commitments on the second year. And while it continues to give us very little long-term certainty, it's very generous to district councils in the short term, giving Lichfield District Council windfall income of £2.4 million this year and £1.9 million next year, largely due to delays in the implementation of those business rate reviews. We've also had higher than expected housing completions, better than expected collection performances on both council tax and business rate funds, less pressure on bad debt provision, and a number of other specific grants which have been useful. It's in the context of this stronger than forecast capital performance. And before I move on, I also have to note some of the external factors that challenge our situation. Energy costs, fueled in no small part by the illegal war in Ukraine, are high and hurt us as a council when lighting and heating our own estate. Fuel costs remain high and adversely affect the waste and work in our parks. And the rate of inflation remaining as high as it is continues to put pressure on our forthcoming major construction projects at the same time as the increasing interest rates aimed at containing that rate are making it more difficult for us to borrow funds to deliver on those projects. The assessment of those risks has led to the advice from Anthony as Section 151 officer that our minimum level of general reserves must be increased to £1.9 million while the situation persists. And that is formally recommended to Council tonight at 2.4. Chairman, the fact that the national situation is stubbornly unchanging is a source of constant frustration. We survived 2 years of COVID, and we delivered all reliefs efficiently and on time, demonstrating the benefits of the local and responsive approach that district councils can take when we're just allowed to do so. But we've survived financially for far longer, waiting for more certainty or for more flesh on the bones. We cannot do this forever. There's a quote famously misattributed to Albert Einstein that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That is precisely what this council risked doing, and why this MTFS, building on the moves that we began last year, shows a radical rethink. Members might recall that in the last year we carried out a comprehensive and wide-ranging review of our reserve, considering what we were holding and whether it was necessary, releasing what we could into a fund for strategic reserve and strategic projects. And we proposed to place the majority of the windfall income into that, providing committed funding to the capital programme. That programme, I would suggest, members, is one of the most ambitious advanced by this council. Not only will it deliver some of the most regularly demanded projects as requested by residents, but will do so with a plan that delivers payback on those and whilst carrying out a parallel focus on projects supporting our residents. In partnership with the landowners of Three Spires, we'll deliver the cinema for the Shield District. A long-awaited project with a funding route agreed. I'm very excited to deliver it and bring the former Debenham store back into vibrant use that is funded in this MTFS. As we promised, we'll deliver the replacement leisure centre that we committed to at that Garrett Pivotal meeting. And while we've missed out on external funding, we will deliver that using internal borrowing to avoid the high risk of external, and that is funded in this MTFS. Using our council company, we'll take our existing leisure centres back in-house and manage those, taking advantage of the quicker and more responsive approach by removing the potential for pulling council governance, and that is funded in this MTFS. Assuming that the next phase is approved, we'll provide targeted support for the most vulnerable residents in this district, while removing many from harmful and demoralising debt. And this new approach will see the council deliver for its residents, and will continue doing all the other things that make this an amazing district to live in, even if they are business as usual. We'll carry on offering the events and the schemes in our parks. We'll carry on offering diligent and careful planning decisions and planning advice. We're collecting 70,000 bins a week for our households, and all of that in the face of financial turmoil internationally and domestically that I've already mentioned. And we'll do all of that for just £3.61 a week for a band fee property. Tonight, members, is the night that we agree the rate of council tax. And I remind you that we do that on a year-by-year basis and cannot commit next year's council to any decision that we make tonight. While we represent 10% of the total council tax bill, our better than expected performance, our better than expected settlement, and our new approach means that we have no need to make the situation any more difficult for our residents. Therefore, the Lichfield District Council element of council tax will be frozen for the forthcoming financial year. But that's not the only way that we're going to help our residents. For each of the next 2 financial years, there will be a £50,000 fund which we're creating to support residents who are struggling in the face of the cost of living, supporting and augmenting the changes to council tax support which is proposed in the next paper. We're also creating a £100,000 a year fund for projects that might not be seen as strategic priorities, but which still need funding to get off the ground, which is accessible for council projects, but we may consider third-party applicants if there's significant local benefit. And to ensure the maximum amount of central government grant is spent with no risk of clawback, we're awarding an additional £50 payment to the most vulnerable council tax support claimants. Chairman, I would submit that these are the actions of a proactive and compassionate council. We're not simply increasing council tax because it's been made more easy for us to do so and because Westminster says we must. We're going to do what we here do best, to review the situation, to assess where the need and the pressure fall, and to chart a course that finds a balanced solution. And while we ourselves may have needs and may also face pressures, our traditional prudence has placed us in a position where we have the financial resilience to do what's right by our residents. Endlessly guarding our reserve and endless increases in taxation are not sustainable and do not serve this difficult well. Members, Lichfield District Council achieves amazing things for a very small amount of money for each individual household. Last year, we made some brave choices. We moved away from battening down the hatches and weathering the storm and chose to point our prow into the breakers and move forward through the waves. We're not yet out of those waves, but this ambitious program can fill the sails and bring us forward whilst keeping the maximum number of people safe, served, and supported. This is a sensible, reasoned, and rational budget, which balances prudence with ambition, which balances responsibility with compassion, and which offers responsiveness, support, and progress. I am pleased to move its adoption by this council.
Could you please second that, councillor Ely? It's sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second the FDFS and the proposals for the council tax. And you don't want to speak about it.
Okay, I'll open it up for debate. That's Norman.
Thank you, Chair. Some echoes there of Councillor Strachan's speech, which was held at the office in Stafford recently. I hope that particular council is not going to repeat it here, repeating Gershon. I think it does every year regarding the dice that local authorities like Lichfield District and Staffordshire County Council and others find themselves in under this particular government and in previous government. In fact, I can go further back than that because I remember in the 80s it was for every £1 over a certain level, they took £9 off you. And in 1984, the government banned Solace, the Society of Local Authority Chief Executives, from publishing what they regarded as propaganda, but I regard as the Chief Executive's plea for help for local governments. So we've been here before, but now we have the limit to what council tax payers can have, unless they go through a very expensive and onerous referendum. The other issue that has been raised, and I understand that, is that every government seems not to be quite so enthused about local government as we are in local government. And every time a leader of a local council, becomes an MP, I tend to look down on them. Unfortunately, I did that with David Blunkett, but he told me he was a minister, so he did have something to do. He wasn't from the backbenches voting, but I have a great respect for local government and less respect for members of Parliament generally. I go on to Lichfield District Council though, and certainly I will also echo Councillor Strachan. Thanks to Anthony Thomas and the work that he does and the work he has to change. We've got highlighted the MTFS here today. I've seen the MTFS so many times, I'm not quite sure where I am now. But the amount of work that's needed in there to make those changes, and of course we still haven't got my 3-year settlement that we all hope might happen. Councillor Strachan certainly Anthony Thomas and his team would advise. Now I did think of an alternative budget, because that always looks good in having an alternative budget. Every opposition who doesn't have an alternative budget loses the vote. Except in Plymouth yesterday, where there happened to be 2 Conservative groups and not an independent. But that's the only one I know of where the opposition doesn't lose the vote. Of course, if we've got the numbers, you've got a problem. Now, the 34 Conservatives, one left because of Boris Johnson and Mr. Pemberton. One left because he never turned up, so the left, and the other one gone to the twilight zone. So actually, there's just 31 Conservatives and 10 of us. No, sorry, 11. We got another one from the end of the day, but still, the figures don't work out for us. We do support the 0% council tax increase, or the freeze on council tax, if you like. As in fact, you may remember we did last year. We didn't get any support over here, but we did that last year. We didn't get that support from the Conservatives that time whatsoever this time. What we don't support though is the budget. And if you want to look at the budget, then ask us after May the 4th. And if the residents of Lichfield District decide that Labour should be in control, or other groups in control of the district council, then we can look at that budget again. But I do know it'd be awkward for some members here, 6 of them at least, who actually voted for a £70 increase of the day. The county council might find it difficult to vote for 0 here, but leaving that aside, that's not the matter for them and what the think of that. As I say, what I hope we'll do, I'm made for, after metaphor, we'll bring in our own budget if we're in control. If not, fair enough, you can on with your budgets and we'll certainly scrutinise them as we go along. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not really a budget, is it? It's the government's budget. And when you consult people, you ignore what they say. All but two of the points made on the consultation was to decrease the budget. Only two said they want to increase parks and something else, so not the three. So, yeah, we'll be voting against the, well, staying rather on the council tax increase, which we support that, but we do not support the budget that you put before us. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor White?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank Councillor Norman for advising me to guard against history lessons. I did, though, sort of momentarily revel in the irony of the fact that he said that I shouldn't be mentioning things like the Gershman Review, and then proceeded to give us a history lesson from the 1980s about rate setting. But he can reconcile that in his own brain. Different authorities have different responsibilities. Staffordshire County Council has a responsibility for social services, whether the formulation of the costs are entirely different. Each authority determines the amount it requires in council tax in different ways and sets about solving that problem in different ways. So therefore, I'm perfectly capable of standing here and observing and indeed participating in the debate around the MTFS and coming to my own conclusions about what this authority needs without any advice from Councillor Norman, or indeed any embarrassment on my part when the vote happens. Interestingly, Councillor Norman lays down a threat, doesn't he, in this meeting? It says, well, let's see what the electorates say. And then we have a Labour sting in the tail. If we get past May the 4th, and he's then got the numbers, because don't forget, he hasn't proposed an alternative budget tonight because he doesn't have the numbers. So it's just not worth giving the electorate a sense of where he would take the budget of Lichfield District Council if he had the opportunity. But no, the electorate can wait and see. Let's wait to see how the electorate votes, and then what will happen is Councillor Norman, should he still be the leader of the Labour group, I know there's some aspiring councillors who sit on these benches who might want to think of alternatives. Let's see what alternatives they bring forward after the election. Ladies and gentlemen, the surprise may await depending on what the electorate say, but I think the electorate will look at this budget and go, you know what, the Conservatives at Lichfield District Council have got it right. Councillor Strachan articulated a brilliant budget, and I commend that budget for this council.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Robertson?
Thank you, Chair. I welcome Councillor Norman mentioning the discussion we had last year regarding the potential that we might be able to look at a 0% rise last year, because at that point, certainly members over this side of the chamber were aware that we were looking ahead and we were seeing the cost of living crisis that we've all come to know really starting to fight. Councillor White was that one, sorry, the iteration of my suggestion, and I thank Councillor White for that. Very quickly teach, although the reason I actually wrote tonight is to thank Councillor Strachan for very closely into a 0% increase. I know I've been badgering him, and I'll also I've been badgering him at every single meeting and every single opportunity I've had. It's about June, I think. I think that was the first time I raised, and I think it's really important that we do what we can. However, touching back on that, the MTFS that we have before assumes a 3% increase in council tax following forward. And that is very easy to overlook, particularly when we're not really expecting to see prices go down. Maybe the rate of increase of the prices and particularly food and heating and energy and fuel, maybe the rate of increase is about to slow, but they're not going to go back to the levels that we saw previously, or certainly not predicted to for a long time. And what we are doing somewhat with the 0% increase is keeping the can down the road. Now, the reason for that is that the central government will not fund local properly. What we're seeing here, every time we have to put up our council tax just to cover our bills, every time the council has to look at a 5% increase just to cover the outgoing, what we are seeing is central government cost shunting, passing the responsibility of that down to local government.
And the only lever that we have to be able to do that is through our council tax. And I cannot think of a more poorly designed tax that I have ever come across around one that is based on the value of your house in 1991, even if it wasn't built in 1991. It is an absolute farce the way the council tax is calculated. An absolute farce of the variations that you see in the country. Council tax is a deeply regressive way of raising revenue, and the longer that central government continue to rely on that as a bit of a cash cow to allow councils to just take it out of their communities that way and not fund it through proper progressive taxation that the Treasury has a handle on, we will continue to have these arguments where local government are having to talk about quite significant increases in a regressive tax rather than the government doing what they need to do and supporting the people who deliver services locally in the close to people that we can. Alongside that, I think it's also very worth mentioning that at a recent presentation at either over the curriculum or audit and standard, they were both in the same week, I can't remember which one it was. The section 151 office gave us a presentation saying that he expects in 2 years' time funding to have recovered to 2010 levels. At which point I sat up with my child, looks like we're going to get some cash in from somewhere. But upon questioning, that's not funding in real terms, that's cash terms. So for the next 2 years, not only have we faced rampant inflation this year, rampant inflation last year, levels of inflation in the 12 years previous, or sorry, 11 years previous to that. Inflation has eaten away at that funding, and not only has inflation eaten away at that funding, we are still in real cash terms lower than we were then. We've absolutely got to get a government which listens to the people, to the councils in the country who deliver those services. I mean, we absolutely must make that case. The central government economy is failing our benefits, failing country.
Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo everything that Councillor Robertson just said, but focusing on reserves. If you look at page 50, item 1.18, general reserves based on current projections are sufficient to balance the budget until 26-27. However, this is not a sustainable approach, and the council will need to identify potential options to close the funding gap. What are those options? Or are we being invited to vote tonight for picking the poll? I think that's an important point. Secondly, on page 63, there's a table at the top of that page which shows various scenarios for how the funding might pan out. And the preferred one, or the medium one, is showing that there are £2.5 million left in 2026-27. I'll remind members that when the last Labour administration left this council, they left it with £24 million of reserves. So where's all that gone? Much of it has gone for the reasons that Councillor Robertson's explained, because local authority has been underfunded for the past 13 years by the Tory government. So we've not had the money, we've had to steal it from reserves. It's also been squandered on many things as well over the past 13 years. Councillor Strachan talks about the great things they're going to do. And while I commend those great things and certainly support the 0% tax increase, I wonder why that side of the chamber didn't support it last year when we proposed it. Nothing to do with the elections this year afterwards, but who knows? So I think that the risk is that we've got £11 million going on a new leisure centre, £5 million going on the cinema. Who knows how much will have to be spent on the Birmingham Road site to make that viable? Who knows how much will have to be spent on the pools at Buntwood and in Litchfield, current and future, because there's no central government support for heating in those areas. So there's a very serious hole in this budget and many unknown situations that we need to be aware of. So I think while I support again the 0% increase that we did last year, with serious doubts and questions
about the MTFS itself and its future viability. Thank you.
Any other speakers? No, I'll give Councillor Wilcox the opportunity to sum up. Sorry, to speak in seconding.
Thank you, Chairman. We held for the first time on the 15th of December a special overview and scrutiny committee convened at the request of myself and my vice chair, Councillor Norman, with the sole purpose to look at the MTFS and in particular some of the pre-budget assumptions being put forward. Given the precarious situation we find ourselves in, it was good news for once coming from central government with the windfall as mentioned by the portfolio holder, giving options to fund priorities and means more importantly, no budget gap for 23-24 and 24-25. Mr. Chairman, the meeting was also an opportunity for the committee to seek clarification from the portfolio holder and challenge some of the assumptions in the budget, and at the same time offer other potential areas for him to explore further around revenue streams. I would also like to think that this additional meeting gave members the opportunity to understand better the difficulties that the portfolio holder has in trying to both balance the books and second guess issues such as business rate, new homes bonus, and the uncertainty around their continuation of the medium and long term. I hope the portfolio holder thinks this exercise is worthwhile and would value further meetings on this type. As CNR officers led by Anthony Thomas continues to manage our finances and budgetary pressures throughout the next financial years. Can I, on behalf of Overview and Scrutiny, publicly thank Anthony Thomas and his team for their continued hard work and dedication in looking after our finances and producing such detailed but clear financial information sent to members. It's clear we have before us a robust and detailed set of financial papers this evening that looks to increase the minimum level of reserves that we hold, as well as put aside contingencies for both this coming financial year and the following financial year for the cost of living increases we face, and an in-year growth contingency budget again for this year and the following financial year. We believe this is prudent and sound business approach. These measures being put in place will, we believe, address some of the real financial uncertainties that we may face over the course of the next 2 years or so. The medium-term financial strategy seems sensible in its approach and comes with well thought out assumptions and predictions over this period. The budget principles set out in 3.2 on page 52 are clear, concise and well documented. Mr. Chairman, in relation to council tax, the portfolio holder has put the case forward well with a proposal to freeze council tax this coming year 23-24, with sound financial modelling that looks to increase in 24-25 by 1.99% and continue with a similar percentage increases to subsequent years, as shown as 3.22 in the table at the bottom of page 56 of the papers. Mr. Chairman, I am delighted to support these proposals, including the freezing council tax for the next financial year. Thank you.
Okay, and the summing up of Councillor Stratton.
I'm grateful, Chairman. I'll be reasonably brief in this. First, to reassure Councillor Norman, this is definitely not central government budget. And His Majesty's Treasury actually expected, and we're briefing the press, that 95% of authorities were expected to go for the maximum increase in council tax, which is why they did it. Those of us who are at the pointy end will know that we make our own decisions and we make it based on our own information, and we didn't need it. Council tax is a single year decision, and Councillor Robertson accused me of kicking the can down the road. He's perfectly correct. Yes, I am. That's why I'm calling for certainty in the future local government budget, because if that certainty arises, then we can actually make the decisions that we need to. I'm grateful for his attack on council tax. It's a regressive tax. I agree with him. But I'd also gently point out that our windfall income in just year one far exceeds any council tax increase that I may be able to bring in for the entirety of the medium-term financial strategy. And so I would far rather fund this very ambitious program with the government money and not with our residents' money. And that's why we're taking the decision to take that pressure off the residents. Councillor Ball called on me to identify options to close the funding gap. Well, we've had several years of making efficiencies and our belts are about as tight as they can get. But I'd also remind him that we do carry assets. We also carry strategic investments, both of which we could simplify. But I far prefer the projects that we're bringing forward start to generate incomes. And I'd remind him that we never actually budget for income until it's a known, because it's simply unknowable
And I think I've been playing far faster and looser with this budget if I put in guesswork estimates on income rather than trying to tell the picture as it is. And I have come to this council being very honest about that. The revised approach to council tax, as I said in my opening, is on this year's performance. You may recall that I said last year, when the opposition was moved to freeze, I dearly wished that I could. And we actually held our increase back below what it could have been. But at the time, we simply haven't quite got our ducks in a row with the release and with sorting out where we needed to fund things. This year, we are in a position to do so. So that is why that thing has come forward. Then it is time for us to forge ahead. We spent the last 2 years effectively turning around, and it's time that we moved on and actually did what we said that we come here to do after a couple of years of delay caused by a pandemic that was out of our control. And so I would urge all members tonight to vote for this NGFS so we can get on with doing what we said we were going to do.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. I'm going to try and help the meeting here in terms of what I think you might be voting on. To echo what Councillor Norman said, and supported by other members of the Labour Group, the Labour Group wants to support council tax freeze, but not support the budget, was the words that I recorded. So what I'm going to suggest is that there's actually two main votes here. Firstly, and it's on Appendix A, the full detail of the council tax resolution, which is summarised in 2.1 recommendation. 2.1 contains the council tax for 23-24 being 187.85, no increase on previous year. So what I would suggest is that you first of all vote on the council tax resolution, which I think Labour are minded to support, and then vote on the other recommendations, which are effectively 2.2 right through to 2.17. But I will note that 2.15 refers to the Freedom Leisure amendment, which needs to be included in the council tax resolution. So I hope that helps. So the first vote will be in accepting page 127 and 128, which is the council tax resolution, to include 2.15. And then the second vote will be on the MTFS budget, which is effectively all of the other numbers, 2.2 to 2.17. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. First of all, the vote on, and these will both be named votes. First of all, we'll vote on the council tax resolution as in Appendix A, pages 127 and 128, but including the reference to 2.15, which is the Freedom Leisure. We'll pass to Mr. Blanchard.
Thank you, Chair. If I could ask councillors to indicate if they are for or against the council tax resolution. Or abstain, of course. Councillor Anketel. For. Councillor Baker. For. Councillor Ball. For. Councillor Benedician. Councillor Barnett. Councillor Burke. For. Councillor Cox. For. Councillor D. Cross. For. Councillor R. Cross. For. Councillor Eady. For. Councillor Eaglen. For. Councillor D. Ennis. For. Councillor L. Ennis. For. Councillor Evans. For. Councillor Greatrek.
For.
Councillor Gwilt. For. Councillor Home. For. Councillor Humphrey. For. Councillor Lax. For. Councillor E. Little. For. Councillor Marshall. For. Councillor Matthews. For. Councillor Norman. For. Councillor Powell. For. Councillor Robertson. For. Councillor Salter. For. Councillor Sylvester Hall. For. Councillor Smith. For. Councillor Spruce. For. Councillor Strachan. For. Councillor Taylor. For. Councillor Tranter. For. Councillor Warburton. For. Councillor White. For. Councillor M. Wilcox. For. Councillor S. Wilcox. For. Councillor A. Yates. For. Councillor B. Yates. For. Thank you very much.
I know that to be a unanimous vote, which then moves us on to the second vote, which having voted on effectively 2.1 and 2.15, This is from 2.2 to 2.17 with the exception of 2.15, which you've already accepted. So this is a second main vote.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Okay, councillor Anketel. Abstain. Councillor Baker. For. Councillor Ward. Abstain. Councillor Benedician. Councillor Barnett. Councillor Birch. Abstain. Councillor Cox. For. Councillor D Cross. For. Councillor R Cross. For. Councillor Edie. For. Councillor Eagland. Councillor D Ennis. Councillor L Ennis. Councillor Evan.
Abstain.
Councillor Greatrex.
For.
Councillor Gwilt. Councillor Hove. Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Lax. Councillor E Little. Councillor Marshall. Councillor Matthews. Councillor Norman. Abstain. Councillor Powell. Councillor Robertson. Councillor Salter. Councillor Sylvester Hall. Councillor Smith. Councillor Spruce. Councillor Strachan. Councillor Tranter. Councillor Warburton. Apologies, I think I forgot Councillor Taylor. Thank you, Councillor. Keep your under toes. Councillor White. Councillor M Wilcox. Councillor S Wilcox. Councillor A Yates. And Councillor B Yates.
Okay, the vote is 28 for, 10 abstain. So the vote is carried. Move to item 11, proposed new council tax support scheme, LCTS. With you, councillor Strachan.
I'm grateful, Chairman, and I'm delighted to present the result of 18 months of hard work. And I once again like to thank all officers concerned, both those who are still with the council and those who have since moved past the leave. This is a revision or bringing in a brand new local council tax support scheme, moving away from our existing scheme, which has served us for several years, and moving to a banded scheme, which was very much the modern route. The previous scheme, we have identified a number of pitfalls, most problematic of which was the policy to only relieve up to 80% of council tax, with some residents sometimes struggling to pay even the 20% remaining, and finding themselves trapped into growing and grave debt. This new banded scheme proposes to relieve up to 100% and to better target what relief we do offer. Efforts have been made, and hopefully the paper speaks to those better than I could, to support as many people as possible, with those who may be potentially left worse off being eligible for hardship funding and for short-term funding under Section 13A of the Local Government Act, a proposal for which will be coming to the next Cabinet meeting in March. The proposed changes have been consulted on and the responses considered. I believe they're collated in the paper. The only main departure from the scheme consulted on is the decision to maintain extended payments where a former claimant has secured employment, and that improves employment retention and smooths the route. And that was born certainly of my experience with the Raven Service, having seen that really work, and so we chose to make that. The scheme is forecast to be around £600,000 more generous than the previous one, but it will bring with it lower administration costs, hopefully less concern, less bad debt, and better targeting. And so it may well be that that nets out after trial bidding has taken place. Members may note that the key pitfall or the key issue for a banded scheme is where claimants are on variable income, particularly if that is a low variable income. The bands have been deliberately wide, and we believe they should give enough space to avoid any cliff edges or people tipping over. But that's exactly what discretionary elements are for, and we will look to use those. And the bands have been designed by those who are very experienced in this sector and tell me that that should be fit. Our precepting counterparties have been consulted and are content with this, and I would like to offer my thanks to the precepting parties for the sensible and pragmatic view that they've taken. Chairman, I sincerely hope that this can find cross-party support. I believe it's politically uncontroversial. It's a product of this council seeking to better use the direct resources that it has to support those who need it most, and also to rectify historic unintended consequences. I'm pleased to move this scheme, and I hope it will be supported by all members.
Thank you. Councillor Spruce, would you like a second?
Thank you, Chair, for all the very reasons so ably put by Councillor Strachan. I have pleasure in seconding.
Okay, are there any comments? Councillor Robertson?
Thank you, Chair. This is a brilliant piece of work, and I can't. I'm not standing up here to say this is what we should be doing. It follows what the consultation said, and provide more support for people. There's a huge amount on here that we should be quite proud to be offering. My only concern though comes on page 30. And it is in particular in relation to 369 people who will miss out. Now, whenever you make a change of this magnitude, some people will miss out. And I think for those people who are losing less than £1 a week, they're possibly not going to be as concerned as some of the other people showing in that table. But there are 369 people who are already receiving both council tax support, who are going to find life more difficult than fantastic. I don't want to speak to the council, obviously, if I like to. In particular, there are 10 people there who are expected to lose over £20 per week. That is £1,000 a year. That is a massive amount of money for some really vulnerable people in our district. And whilst I think it's absolutely appropriate that this is a much better model that we need to work towards, there are 369 people there who are going to find life more difficult as a result of what we're about to do. So what I would like to ask, and possibly not the best forum to do it, but I do think it's important that we raise it, is at the next overview and scrutiny committee meeting, have something come forward with ways that we might be able to look at the transition and mitigating factors, so that those 369 people, and in particular, the 10 residents who are due to lose over £20 a week, and the 20 residents who are due to lose between 15 and £20 a week. And we are looking at that and looking at ways to prevent them finding that cliff edge. Because for some people, that £20 is going to be their food. We've already got a food bank that's putting massively about saying we are desperate for donations, we are running out of food, the amount of needs far outstripping the amount of support they're able to provide. And actually, as a council, I think we have a responsibility if we're going to make this change, which I'll repeat, I think is a good change. I think it's responsible for us to make sure that we are looking at ways to try and bridge that change, or potentially mitigate that change for those 369 people. So I rise to make that point, notwithstanding my support for the changes that are proposed.
Councillor Eady, is independent.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure Councillor Strachan will want to come back in a moment and highlight obviously what is in the paper that's in front of us in terms of the exceptional hardship scheme. And in the last debate that we had around the budget, Councillor Robertson, you made the point that we've been harrying Councillor Strachan repeatedly, obviously to look at a zero increase. I'm sure you acknowledge I have been harrying them to look at this council tax support scheme in nearly every meeting that we have had with this broader finance paper, which often seems every meeting. As you've highlighted, 1,870 people will receive more support. There is 369 people as you've drawn out who will find a decrease in terms of the support that they're getting. And in terms of giving support to this, obviously, again, as I've referenced already, there is the hardship scheme that is absolutely intended to ease those people into the arrangements, make sure wherever we can that they do not obviously suffer adversely. As I've repeatedly said to Councillor Strachan, I do not believe any actions of this council should be pushing people into further debt, and we should be doing all that we can to obviously take people out of debt where we are responsible for it. And I certainly look forward to any actions it brings forward in the future in terms of to help people. We know, again, as we've talked about in terms of the budget, that there is a cost of living crisis. I think that it's critical that we do all that we can as a council to help people. And therefore, I'm really grateful to Councillor Robertson and all the rest of the members for supporting the scheme, coming forward and helping our residents.
If there are no other indications, I'll bring back in Councillor Strackland.
I only guide Councillor Robertson very gently towards paragraph 3.21 and then 3.32 through to 3.34. And that is where there are people receiving less support, we are bringing in the exceptional hardship scheme, and we are already going to be bringing through transitional arrangement of section 13A, which will be going to the next cabinet meeting. And I sincerely hope to be approved. We never invite everybody to be placed in contact. So we've got it, we understand it, we're going to review it in a year. But we think it's going to be addressed in the best possible.
Okay, that's the summing up. So we now move to the vote. All those in favour of this proposal? Any against? Abstentions? That looks like unanimous. Item 12 is the political balance and necessary changes to the appointments to committee. I'll call on Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the Chief Executive decision to amend political balance and appointment of committee be endorsed by the Council.
That's being seconded by Councillor Norman.
Yes, Chair, it also solves the mystery WhatsApp message I got from a number I didn't know. Turns out to be the leader of the council asked me to do just this, which I didn't realise I was until I looked at the instructions that someone would get in these circumstances. Yes, I'm happy to second that.
Okay, any debate necessary? No? Okay, all those in favour? That's right, yes. Item 13 is the pay policy statement for this year. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the updated pay policy statement would be approved for publication.
Okay, and that's being seconded by Councillor Sonia Wilcox. Is there any debate necessary on this item? Councillor Ball.
Not so much debate, Chair, but a point of information really I'm seeking. On page 259, there's a table there, and we have 75 people, and that's about 15%, I believe, of the council staff, who we are about to pay over £1,200 a year to drive around in their cars. Now, that will be a condition of their employment, I understand that. But we declared a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, a climate change emergency. And I'd just like to know what measures we have in mind to make sure that those cars driven are electric cars rather than petrol and diesel, which they probably are at the moment, because that's certainly not helping climate change by paying people that money to drive around in petrol and diesel cars.
Okay, can I remind Councillor Matthews you have the microphone on? So anybody else wishes to speak? Councillor Matt Marshall.
Thank you. Yes, Chair. I suppose I just wish to put on record the fact that not everybody subscribes to the carbon net zero narrative. Now, I may be singling myself out as a heretic, but lots and lots of reports have suggested that petrol cars are just as good for the environment as electric cars. And the reason is that the mining necessary for the electric cars is being shown to be extremely detrimental to the environment. And it's now come to light that electric cars, because they're much, much heavier than petrol cars and diesel cars, they actually use their tyres up far more quickly. And I can attest to that, because for the last 18 months, I've driven an electric car and it absolutely eats tyres. So I do think we need to get some balance here. And the fact that electric cars are seen as being the new nirvana, if you like, I think needs to be interrogated. I don't think we should just assume that because Greta Thunberg said that we should all be driving electric cars, that is necessarily the case. So, as I say, I'm just perhaps singling myself out now as a complete heretic. But I do think that we are being led up the garden path by this government and others, and the various, the WEF as well, World Economic Forum, The carbon net zero narrative, I think, is incorrect. And I think it needs to be totally reassessed. So the point that was being made about all the employees driving electric cars, EVs, I think is misguided. And I do think we need to take a more nuanced approach to this. And personally, if it wasn't for the tax breaks that I enjoy as a company car driver, I would still be driving a diesel car. Thank you, John.
Right, can I remind members we're talking about the pay policy document? This is not a debate about Greta Thunberg versus Jeremy Clarkson. There are 3 indicated speakers. Can I just remind you we are on pay policy? Councillor Eadie.
Thank you, Chair, for that direction. We did seem to stray away there for a moment. The Chief Executive has asked me just to make the point that obviously we can't enforce on our staff the choice that they make in their personal lives in terms of vehicles. The reality, however, is that we would seek to encourage them wherever they can, obviously, to look at the use of electric vehicles. And indeed, I look to my colleague, Councillor Lax, to bring forward the work that she's doing at the moment, which is increase the number of EV charging points in our district to encourage all council staff and indeed anybody else who lives here and visits to use EV charging wherever possible. I must obviously, before I sit down, say perhaps this is what Councillor Norman's got in the Labour version of the budget. All staff are going to be given an EV charging point. If you want to bring that one forward, I'm sure we will look at it well.
Okay, 2 more speakers on pay policy. Firstly, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to try and not lose my temper. I think Councillor Ball is right to raise this. There is significant mitigation needed to make sure that we continue to have a planet that can support human life. I can't believe we're having to have this discussion. And coming back to Councillor Eadie's point, there are potentially other things that we may be able to look at in the car arrangements and things along those lines. We may be able to use to encourage people out of polluting cars that will kill the planet. Statement of fact, absolute massive scientific consensus on that. I can't believe we're going to try and deal with climate denialism and the change in 2023. So I think Council Board is trying to raise this. We'd like to keep pressure on, because in reality, if we don't get this right, the planet will die and the human race will die. And I'm deliberately being hyperbolic there, but it's statements of fact. I think we are right to raise that as part of this, and I thank Councillor Ball for raising it.
Councillor Norman.
Yeah, thank you. That's only a simple point I want to make, apart from just saying that if you want to know what the future Labour Council budget might be, wait for the manifesto. Is that I'm sure Councillor Matthews will to answer the question, because the environmental impact on the report says none. So therefore, there must have been some investigation of the environmental impact of the policy, and therefore this would have been addressed at that time.
Okay, Councillor Matthews, did you want to respond?
I'm looking at further to add. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other debates on this item? Okay, we're happy to accept the report. Agree. Item 14 is the calendar meetings, and it's with Councillor Eadie against present.
Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps one that's slightly less contentious. I move that the calendar of meetings for the municipal year 23-24 be approved.
And then Councillor Lax, a second.
I second, but I reserve the right to speak just in case Councillor Ball, as per usual, has found something that may need reviewing.
I have 3 speakers, amazingly. Councillor Norman.
There might be some clashes in here, we haven't found them yet, but there will be no doubt. My question is that the youth council seems to be meeting more often than the council does in this chamber. So I'd like to get some reports back on what's happened here. I haven't had any yet, maybe it's early days, but hopefully we'll get some in the future. Because we know the council's record of consultation isn't great. So I'd just like them to be reassured that the youth council will get some, will bring some feedback, and then we can actually look at what their views are on various issues. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, next to indicate is Councillor Cox.
It was on youth council that I wish to comment, because I'm delighted that it's included within our calendar. So we absolutely, it is their council that we have got to be completely aware that they are meeting. And there's only been 2 meetings so far, Councillor Norman. Those were very much procedural meetings where they've elected themselves a chairman, a vice chair, and a secretary and treasurer. They had some open debate with regards what they would like to see on an agenda. So it's the buildings blocks that are occurring at the present moment. And I think the frequency of it is for your interest. You say 1 meeting was more than the council. Yes, we meet periodically. But actually, don't forget, we actually meet more regularly than that because we have all the various committees and so forth in the nature of council. So, in the sense of their business, it obviously is frequent as ours in many respects. And I've attended 2, and I am delighted with the way that they conduct themselves. We should be very, very proud of our young people within the district, and it also gives them a great opportunity. And the opportunity is actually for us to actually listen and take things on board. It's not necessarily a directorate for us, but at least we will understand the thoughts and the opinions of younger people that otherwise can't actually engage into a process until they become 18 plus. So I think I commend it. I'm very pleased that it's part of our calendar. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Ennis.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to bring up that members induction day is that not my name, not with Ireland, and I was looking up to win. I work in a school, the both daytime days, so I can attend those. And there may be other people in the chamber or people who may win an election, let's say, who won't go to during the day, who may need something in the evening on the Thank you.
There are no other indications, so councillor would like to reserve the right to speak. That's an opportunity to respond.
I just can't resist. Thank you, councillor Ennis. I think that's a very good point. And just to endorse what my colleague has said about the youth council, for those who attended the sounding board for the city centre master plan, it was amazing to have to see the feedback of the younger demographic and what they liked about Lichfield, which was a lot of our old buildings and the historic park. So I think that wouldn't have come across if there hadn't been the engagement and public consultation. So it's a great thing to have this council set up.
Thank you. Is everybody happy with the calendar of meetings? We'll adopt those. No amendments or alterations apart from looking at daytime training post the election. Okay, we go on to item 15, which is a motion on notice. I understand this is being presented by Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. I am sorry, I've lost the plan. I'm still trying to calm down from the last one. I am genuinely proud to be able to stand up and propose this today. I think it is something really important that we can do. Before I get into why I think it's worth just kind of revisiting what we mean by the real living wage. There are kind of 3 almost similar terms that fly around in this debate around what may or may not be a minimum wage. The national minimum wage, the national living wage, and the real living wage. There is only one of those which is actually based on the costs of everyday life, on the cost of things that you need to go about your life in 2023 in the UK, and that is the real living wage. It's managed by a totally independent organisation called the Living Wage Foundation, and they've been doing brilliant work for a number of years to try and lift people out of poverty. In reality, that's what we're talking about here. I am proud that Lichfield District Council has, for the last year, ensured that all of our members of staff are already paid the real living wage. And I thank Councillor Strachan for listening to lobbying from inside of the chamber. This is something that we could achieve without it being a huge cost. And I was really proud to see that came through. I know we had a discussion about it on pay policy at previous employment committee meeting. What we are seeking to do with this motion is do the next step. We're already looking after the stuff in this building. We're already looking after what happens with the relationship between us and our staff. And that's really important because our staff are our most important and most valuable asset. This though is the next step. By going through the accreditation process, which is one of the acts in this motion, we are able to not just take care of business internally, but to make that statement that it is the right thing to do. To make sure that if you're employing people, they are earning a wage that they can live on. Now, I don't think that is a controversial statement. I would hope that nobody in this chamber should think that that is a controversial statement, and that anybody who would go to work should be able to earn a wage they can live on. I don't think it should be controversial. And that accreditation process allows us to send that message even louder than we're just taking care of business on our own terms. The second part of the motion calls on us to look at our procurement processes. Now, we haven't suggested anything particularly detailed. We haven't suggested anything particularly onerous here. We are asking for an update to those procurement procedures so that we can quickly reward other organisations who are supporting their staff appropriately. Now, again, that is an opportunity for us to reach out, put into the world that actually, if you're doing the right thing by your staff, you're the type of organisation that you want to work with. That change will come through in the fullness of time, and it will be subject, I'm sure, to much conversation between cabinet members and officers and within the officer groups themselves, and I'm sure it will end up coming back to council so we can discuss it then. But those two acts that we've got there are just about that. It's about recognising that we've already started taking care of business at home. We're taking that next step to be bolder and to make sure that we're actually sending a message that shouldn't be controversial. That every single person who goes out to work should be able to earn a wage they can live on. On that basis, I will keep it as short as I can, and I'll commend this motion to everybody in this chamber. I do hope that it gains everybody's support and that we can take that next step and really send that message send that message wide and loud. Yeah.
So Strachan,
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to second this motion. One of those rare moments when an atmosphere of harmony emanates between Councillor Robertson and myself. I sincerely hope the motion will be able to command cross-party support. Members will notice in the recitation to the motion that they state we're already doing the right thing by managing to pay our staff the real living wage. This has been in no small part due to changes made in the last 12 months. What we might have been less good at is shouting it from the rooftops and modelling it as an example of how business should conduct itself. And so that is what Resolution 2 will do, and we will be pleased to start that accreditation process. I sincerely hope that we shall see more local authorities do so within the local government pay structure, which I know can be a little bit difficult to move within, but if we've managed it, then everything else can as well. On the issue of procurement strategy, I just want to place a little bit of flesh on the bones. The Public Services Social Value Act in 2012 requires us to include social value as a measure when commissioning local services and considering social and economic well-being within the local area. So that is already a part of the public procurement process. The Social Value Bill, which I believe fell with a previous government, and the Procurement Bill, which is on its way through, both address this as a relevant and quite clearly appropriate measure and commend it. It is already assessed on a contract by contract basis, as advised by our procurement team. But we will review whether it's necessary to amend the procurement strategy to be explicit. And if it is necessary, that strategy will be brought back before the audit committee. I would only suggest that a little bit of time may be appropriate, given that the procurement bill has not yet become law, and that places a far greater emphasis on transparency in public procurement. And so it may be appropriate to do as part of a wider exercise, which may potentially be a few months down the line yet. But I can certainly commit to do that and really before. Really hope that all members will support.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the motion in general terms. However, there are a couple of things I just wish to observe about it. First of all, any wage level has to be funded. We've had an interesting conversation this evening about the council tax, the difficulty of using local taxation to fund council services. And as that discrepancy widens, we have to fund the commitments that we make in this chamber. Second thing I would just like to warn against is rushing into, as Councillor Strachan illustrated, there's a split into the degree, the revision of the procurement strategy. We've seen the unintended consequences of imposing the wishes of an organisation on others who may subcontract or other third parties. An example very close to home, of course, is the hotel in Birmingham built by Unite, where the imposition of a set of conditions on third parties meant the costs spiraled out of control. As a result of that, it appears to be, according to reports in the Times newspaper, £30 million appears to be missing. So we shouldn't be imposing our will on third parties. There are sole traders who can do work for us who we can't demonstrate whether or not they're able to pay the living wage. Are you going to say to them, if they've had a bad day where they've gone from job to job to job and just not been able to get any money from it, say, well, actually we can't hire you because you can't demonstrate that you're paying the living wage, not the real living wage? Of course we wouldn't. Okay, so we need to have a pragmatic approach to the procurement strategy. My final point, I think, is Councillor Robertson's statement about this should be a controversial statement. We need to be careful in this chamber of just adopting received wisdom. Voltaire is often misquoted when he says, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." People in this chamber may disapprove of what you say, Councillor Robertson. People may disapprove of what other people have said during the course of this evening's debate, or debates, should I say. But I will defend your right to say it, because all views have equal weight, and we ought to listen to them because we learn from what people say in the course of those debates. But in general terms, Chairman, I do support the motion.
Any other speakers? It's been proposed and seconded. No other speakers. All those in favour? That's carried. Item 16 is questions. This is the time when members are able to submit questions prior to the meeting. There are two, and the answers have been circulated by email today, so all members should have seen the responses to the two questions. Those members who submitted their questions are able to ask one supplementary question. It does need to be a question, and the first one is Councillor Anketel, who asked the question of Councillor Lax. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Chair. I thank the Cabinet member for her answer. I'm glad that the District Council will support such vulnerable people to a greater extent than the minimum prescribed by the national government. It is still disappointing that there will be a cap on the maximum support that will be provided to individuals.
Councillor Anketel, is your question along with the statement?
Yes, that's because I understand that the Conservative National Government has increasingly cut local government grants, and that this limits local government action to a very great extent. Will Cabinet members therefore write an open letter to the Prime Minister, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and the Minister for Local Government? This is the question. This is the question. This is the question, Chair.
Who's raising the point of order? Councillor Wilkes, he is asking a question. There is a question.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Anketel, perhaps it would help if we start from the point of can you write to? Just repeat the.
Yes, I'm trying to text. Yes, will the Cabinet member therefore write an open letter to the Prime Minister, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and the Minister for Local Government, ask them to increase the local government grant by 10% with immediate effect, or is she more concerned with the Conservative government's reputation than she is with our constituents' well-being?
Councillor Lax, you're able to respond.
Strange question. Since I started this portfolio in 2019,
And I have assiduously supported ensuring that those who need disabled facilities grants get the help they should expect from this district, notwithstanding the inherited problems caused by the former arrangements. And I think the question about, or the attack, shall we say, trying to say that we only support, and I must admit I got a bit confused at some point. But the current limit is 30,000 is the prescribed limit. I made it clear in my answer that we are going to look to double that because of the increased building costs. So I don't need to write to a Prime Minister, a Chancellor, the Exchequer, etc., because we have been given in the latest guidance from national government the ability of every local authority to take their own course, having regard to their demographics, their needs, etc. In other words, localism feeding down to us, not me writing to central government saying, please dictate to us or change things. And it's just totally unnecessary when what we are going to be putting in place from the 1st of April, I commend this council, and I'm very proud of the work that the officers are currently doing, bring this to fruition, and we will see the result. It's going to be a hard changeover, but we're prepared and we will be ready for the 1st of April.
Yeah, that's the question one. Question two is from Councillor Robertson, raised to Councillor Cox. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Chair. Thank the Cabinet Member for his admittedly very brief answer. And I do look forward to seeing those communications published when they are. As a supplementary, I note that no person speaking on behalf of this council has yet apologised to the community of my ward for the repeated failing, the repeated broken promises regarding the installation of the CCTV. We'll take the opportunity to correct that this evening.
Councillor Cox.
I will, in due course, look at that question, because I'm not, in a sense, going to apologise when we and ourselves have been let down by outside provider. If I was to apologise, I would be running our own staff under a bus, and I'm not prepared to accept that.
That's item 16. Moves to item 17, which is the exclusion of the public and press. And I'm now going to read the section that I'm required to read. That as publicity would be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business, which would involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. That brings the live broadcast to an end, and I'd like to thank those people who've been watching. I know we've had problems with the sound of an early start, but I thank those that have been watching on YouTube for joining us for this evening's meeting.